Hey guys, hope y'all are doing well. Tonight we're going to do something a bit different. Instead of teaching out of Revelation, I've come across some really amazing stuff that I wanted to share with y'all. And the topic is, Jesus says in the New Testament, the scriptures speak of me. So all of the Old Testament scriptures point some way towards Jesus. And I wanted to talk some about Moses and some of his actions he did in the Old Testament, and how he himself is a foreshadowing of Christ as well. And I'm excited. This is really cool stuff. And so, before we get started, I want to give a little bit of background. So, Moses just leads the children of Israel out of bondage and slavery in Egypt. Okay, they've just escaped Pharaoh, and they're wandering through the wilderness on the way to the Promised Land. And Moses is the intercessor for Israel and God, between Israel and God. Okay, and to start out, we're gonna start in Exodus 17, verses 5 and 6. Okay. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Pass before the people, and take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand your staff, which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, and the people may drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. Now, the people of Israel right here had been grumbling because there wasn't nothing to drink in the area. And so they go to Moses, the mediator between them and God, and say, "We need, why'd you take us out of Egypt? We're going to come out here to die in thirst." And so God tells him, "Okay, go to this rock and take your staff and strike the rock, and water will gush forth, saving them." And he takes his staff and does that. He strikes the rock. Now, the next passage, we're going to find out why Moses, this one thing that Moses does here, is so important that Moses is not allowed to actually be the one to take them into the Promised Land. He gets the chance to overlook the Promised Land and see it, but he never gets to take Israel into it because of his mistake here. And at first glance, you would be thinking, this sounds kind of strange. Why would this be such a big deal? Remember, the lens of the Old Testament always pointing to Jesus, and then we'll see why it's so important. And so, now we go to Numbers chapter 20, verse 8. Now, here again, same situation. They've been wandering a little bit further. People are thirsty again. And so they go to Moses and they ask him, to ask God for some water and stuff. And so God says, "Take the rod, and you and your brother Aaron assemble the congregation, and speak to the rock before their eyes, that it may yield its water. You shall thus bring forth water for them out of the rock, and let the congregation and their beasts drink." So God just tells Moses, just speak to the rock. Don't strike it. Just speak to it. So Moses took the rod from before the Lord, just as he had commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock, and he said to them, "Listen now, you rebels, shall we bring forth water for you out of this rock?" Then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came forth abundantly, and the congregation and the beasts drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you have not believed me, to treat me as holy in the sight of the sons of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given to them." Okay, so why is God so upset that Moses struck the rock again instead of speaking to it to bring forth water? I'm going to tell you why, and it's so cool, because Jesus Christ, in order for salvation to pour forth for us, had to be crucified. He had to be struck. And now, after the crucifixion, all you have to do for salvation is simply speak with your mouth and believe in your heart, and salvation is poured out unto you. So you see the amazing foreshadowing here of Christ in the rock. It brings you back to that song, "On this holy rock I stand. All other ground is sinking sand." And so you see a foreshadowing of Christ here, and that's why we call Jesus our rock and our salvation. And so you understand why that was so important to God about when Moses struck it again. And God, and that right there is like crucifying, as Paul says, you're crucifying Jesus all over again. No, there's one death by one sinless man for all. And salvation ensues from that. And so, now I want to go to Exodus 33, verse 18. Now we're going to come to where Moses, this is a spot where Moses comes to God, and he wants to see God. And so he asks God, and I'll start here at 33, verse 18. Then Moses said, I pray you, show me your glory. And God said, I myself will make all my goodness pass before you, and proclaim the name of the Lord before you. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and I will show compassion on whom I will show compassion. But he said, you cannot see my face, for no man can see me and live. Then the Lord said, behold, there is a place by me, and you shall stand there in the rock. And it will come about while my glory is passing by, that I will put you in the cleft of the rock, and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will take my hand away, and you shall see my back, but my face you shall not see. Okay? So God takes Moses, when he's talking, he hides Moses in the rock, so that Moses can be hidden, because the glory of God is so powerful. His perfection or imperfection cannot mix, so that he may live. So now we're going to skip to chapter 34 of Exodus, verse 5 and 6. And we're going to come to when it happens. The Lord descended in the cloud and stood there with him, as he called upon the name of the Lord. Then the Lord passed by in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord God, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in loving kindness and truth. And so, hidden within the cleft of the rock, Moses is kept safe and is able to see the back of the glory of God. We are kept safe in the glorious rock of Jesus. Through Jesus are we able to come to the glory of God, for he is our true mediator before God. Only through that rock can we come before the Lord and his glory. And so you see in the Old Testament, there's so much amazing stuff. And Moses himself is a mediator for the people of Israel, between Israel and God, just as Jesus is the true mediator, the high priest between mankind and God. Without the mediator, we could never ever come before God and his glory. But safely in the cleft of the rock of Jesus, we can come confidently into his presence.